Well, I got a new report in here just a few days ago that I printed off. I'm going to share with you guys. I've spent a lot of time, as you know, especially if you've been following this channel, I spent a lot of time down in the Kiamichi Mountains. And this report comes from the Kiamichi Mountains and illustrates some behavior that is well recorded in Bigfoot related incidents and that I've even experienced myself in the past. So with that being said, I'll get right on this. And this report was sent to me by a retired military gentleman by the name of Jack. He told me I could use his first name, and we'll leave that at that, but say, hey, thank you, Jack, for sharing this story with me. And this took place, or at least when this was related to him, it was in the year 2000 during deer season of that year. And he started off this account. He said, my wife and I were invited to her friend's parents' house to a cookout during deer season of 2000. He said, me and their father were standing around the grill talking about hunting deer, etc. And he asked me if I'd ever been hunting in the Kiamichis, and he said I told him I had not, but I wanted to. And he said he then proceeded to tell me that he and 3 or 4 other guys had gone down there to hunt a couple of years prior to him telling me this story. And the reason Jack's saying 3 or 4 is he's relaying this story from memory, so he doesn't remember exactly if it was 3 or 4 that the gentleman said he was with. But he said that they had gone down to the Kiamichis to hunt a couple of years prior to him telling Jack this story. So he said, I assumed sometime that this would have taken place around 1998. He said, keep in mind that this guy's about 20 years older than me, so at the time he was in his late 40s. And he went on to say that the hunting party had all gone their separate ways during the afternoon to go and hunt, and then as it began to get dark, they had begun to find their way back to camp and get ready to start cooking and stuff. He said they just started a fire and got dinner cooking when they started hearing loud knocks and other strange noises from the woods around them. He said they knew that no other hunters were within their vicinity, so it really got their attention, but after a little while they went in on about their business anyway. And he said they just started eating dinner, and he said, and the woods went dead silent. And he told me it was unseasonably warm that year, so the night critters were still buzzing and chirping, etc., and they all of a sudden stopped like a light switch was flipped off. He said that was very strange to them, as they were all seasoned hunters and knew the woods and never experienced that exact thing before. He said right after the critters went silent, he said a cantaloupe-sized rock came whizzing into camp and landed right into their campfire. He said they immediately grabbed their firearms and expecting someone or something to come into sight, but nothing did. He said the rest of the night, he said they were, and he quoted this gentleman as saying, under siege, as whatever it was continued to circle around their camp and pelt them with rocks and sticks. And he said he told me that they sat back to back in a wagon wheel position for the rest of the night. And he said as daybreak began to light up the sky, this, quote, siege stopped and the critters came back to life. And he said that they endured this for about 12 hours. So they were not hesitant to open up fire into the woods in case it was other hunters, but they were all convinced it was not. And that would be very foolish to keep antagonizing a group of armed men around a campfire that didn't know you were out there. You know, that would have been very dangerous if it was. So they were convinced that it was not other hunters. He said, in fact, as they packed up camp that morning, they began to come clean to one another about weird things that they had heard and smelled the day before. He said, afraid of ridicule, they had kept it to themselves until the events of the night propelled them all to talk about it. And he said, almost to a man, they had heard knocks, whoops, and other strange sounds, and many of them had smelled the foul odor of whatever it was that was out in the woods. He said he kind of chuckled after telling me this and said if someone else had told him this story, they'd have thought they were off their rockers, and he said I would have probably called him a liar. But he told me that he was convinced that what they encountered that night was at least one Bigfoot and possibly 2 or 3, and that he would never doubt anyone who claimed to have a sighting or experience. My wife and I have since lost touch with this family, but I'd love to know exactly where they were at down there, especially since my friend and I have experienced similar things. And I'll say to Jack, if you would like to share those similar things that you mentioned there, I'd love to hear about that. So anyway, that brings up the rock being thrown and other rocks being thrown into their camp. And this behavior has been associated with Bigfoot encounters in the past. I know myself and my friend Brian Baker, we'd camped down in the Kiamichi Mountains, maybe not far from there, I don't know, but back in 2003, and after midnight, something had thrown a large rock against a tree just at the edge of our camp. And when I say a large rock, this was, pretty big, 30 pounds or more thrown there, which kind of rules out anything else really that I can think of. I mean, we know bears don't throw rocks or anything else in the woods. And what this gentleman was talking about here, there's really only 2 suspects. It's either a person, which would be very foolish to be throwing rocks into the camp of a bunch of armed hunters, and the other would be a Sasquatch. And like I say, even historically, there's other accounts of Sasquatch, Bigfoot throwing rocks at people. The most famous, that of the account of Ape Canyon back in the 1920s, in which the miners were staying in a cabin that was assaulted by these creatures late into the night that threw rocks upon the roof of the cabin and even tried to break into it during the night. And that's a very famous account right there. So anyway, that's what he has shared with me, and I hope you guys find that informative. If anyone else has any similar account you'd like to share regarding a Sasquatch, Bigfoot sighting, or any other cryptid that you might have encountered, I'd love to hear about it. And you can send that in an email to bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. That's bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. No, you can't tell it from the camera, but it's pretty cold out here. It's down in the 30s. But anyway, it's just about dark. Just started the new year, so hope everybody's doing well. So that's what here. This is the culprit that comes around when I film close to the house and rubs up against the camera tripod. Why do you always do that? You always follow me out here. Go kill a rat. So anyway, until next time, you guys take care and stay healthy.